Hi YouTube and welcome to
Unbottling Durham.
A student-led podcast aimed to inform about the science, stories and stats of alcohol and uni life. Today we're going to talk about alcohol and the brain and the body, more specifically about how it affects memory, sleeping and cognitive processes. Let's get to unbottling the truth.
So on today's episode, we have a special guest who is Dr. Paul Chazot. He is a professor at Durham University and he works in the biological science department. And I'm going to let him introduce himself and tell you guys about his work as well.
As was said, I'm a professor in pharmacology. So what is pharmacology? Well, pharmacology is all about understanding and developing new drugs for treating the major therapeutic areas that we do need to treat. We have a lot of areas of health that we need to improve, and particularly in the brain. I'm a neuropharmacologist. I focus on the brain, which is obviously the most important organ in the body, and we have a lot of gaps in our ability to treat the major brain and neurological disorders, the major neurodegenerative disorders in particular. We have an aging population, and the brain is aging, and unfortunately, despite that, you might think that's a good thing. We're living longer, but unfortunately, that offers problems of the brain not coping with that aging process and developing neurodegenerative diseases. We have 1 billion people in the world, at least, that suffer from a neurodegenerative disease, and at the moment we have very little to treat these people and give them a good, healthy life going forward as they age. We need to do better with that.
Amazing. Thank you so much for taking time off your schedule to talk with us and to help us dive deep into this biology. We have some icebreaker questions that we would like to ask you. They're just simple yes and no.
So our first question is, can alcohol disrupt your brain chemistry after just one night of heavy drinking?
It certainly can.
Oh, is brain more susceptible to alcohol if it's sleep deprived?
Yeah, again, it certainly can. Yes, I mean, sleep is incredibly important, and yes, alcohol can affect sleep, as we'll discuss a little bit later, I think.
Yes.
In this podcast.
And can drinking reduce your ability to form new memories?
Absolutely, yes.
Even if it's just one night of crazy drinking?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, but before we go into all the negatives of why you should be drinking responsibly, we're going to ask you, why do you think people drink?
Well, maybe I'll bat it back to you. Why do you think people drink? I mean, why do you drink alcohol?
Well, some cocktails are very, very yummy. So that's the main question.
Yeah.
I think personally, we as human species, we're very, very sociable. And we thrive on making social connections. So I reckon it's just another activity where we can create bonds and spend more time with others and essentially just, thrive.
I think some people also drink for courage. They think they might not be able to do certain things unless they have a shot or two, and then they now have this ability to do whatever it is that they want. Some people also drink because it's cultural. Some cultural drinks have fermented grapes and fermented rice and all of those things. Growing up, you've already been drinking even though you weren't necessarily meaning to. So those are some reasons that people drink.
Well, you've hit most of them on the head. I would say, that is the reason I drink. Basically, I'm half French, and a nice glass of red wine is very pleasant. So it's the taste. Yeah, generally you drink alcohol for the taste, be it cocktails or red wine or a good beer. Again, the social aspects. It gives you confidence, I think, to socialise, and it calms you down. And again, there's the biochemistry behind that. Again, we can talk a little bit about that later. The biochemistry makes sense in terms of calming yourself down and giving that confidence to have a social interaction, which is really important. And you know, the certainly in the UK, you think about the pub. You know, it's one of those centre points.
Yeah.
Weatherspoons.
Yeah, centre points in life, basically, where you congregate and have social interactions. It's a place where you actually come for some security. You know, for example, you know, during the floods, you know, around the northeast, people congregated in the pubs to bond and socialise, and you know, having a drink again, it gave them the ability to calm down and relax under quite trying conditions. So there are some very good positive reasons, and actually alcohol does have components which actually are good for your health in moderation. Like anything, it's all about moderation. Small amounts of, for example, again, red wine, my favorite, one of my favourites, is well-known antioxidant, anti-inflammatory components within red wine. So there's very good reasons, health-wise also, why you drink alcohol.
So is that why they say that a glass a day keeps the doctors away?
Absolutely. Yeah. Naturally, of the right sort of.
No.
Like I said, red wine, does have components that have been well studied and well known to be beneficial. Again, in moderation, a glass of red wine, for example, not advertising, but Guinness, for example, stout, has quite high contents of iron, which again, for some people that's a good thing to have if they're depleted in iron for whatever reason.
Anemia.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's there's good things in beer, and there's good reasons why we drink alcohol generally. You can't be in a good for me. You can't be in a good whiskey. And again, it's taste, and it's again the calming aspects of drinking a couple of drams of whiskey. But as with everything, there's a good side and a bad side.
Yeah.
And there's an ugly side.
Yes.
Having just seen the film last night, Good, the Bad and the Ugly, I use that as quite a good analogy for alcohol. Basically, there's some good aspects, there's some bad aspects, and there's some quite ugly aspects when you drink too much.
Yeah.
Basically.
You've crossed that threshold.
Yeah, it's all about moderation, and again, everybody's different because everybody's got a different biochemistry within their body. Some cultures have low levels of alcohol dehydrogenase, which is an enzyme that breaks down alcohol, and therefore it doesn't take a lot of alcohol to have both the positive and negative effects of alcohol. So everybody, across cultures, across different people have different genetics and different abilities to manage their alcohol.
Like the Asian flush. That is
The
just
Asian flush, that's exactly it, because it's all about the enzyme, like I said, alcohol dehydrogenase, which is, you need that enzyme. You can't just take your alcohol and have it for long periods of time, because that will it will build up over time, and it will cause sort of more damaging effects.
And I think that this is why we're here, to talk about the specific biology behind alcohol use and to see how alcohol actually affects our brain's function. So we're happy to have an expert to help our audience be more familiarized with exactly what's going on and let them know what they're drinking and how to moderate their drinking and why. And so we have specific questions for you that would love if you could answer.
Yeah. So now that we're on the same page, let's just dive a bit deeper into the biology. To start things off, let's just look at some of the effect, like something that we all do mostly every single day if we don't have a very, very big summative. So sleep, that one, the silent killer. Like alcohol's relationship with sleep and the circadian rhythm is it's very complex, of course, and often misunderstood. So how does alcohol affect memory formation? In both long and short term.
I'm sorry, can you just ask just the question again?
Yeah. So how does alcohol affect memory formation, both short term and long term, in both short term and long term? Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess the terminology is the word blackouts. Yeah. So blackouts are when you sort of lose, potentially sometimes lose consciousness depending on the levels of alcohol. If you have a high level of alcohol, you can have a long-term sort of blackout, and over that period you can actually lose, well, you don't encode any memories, and also you don't remember anything that's happened during that blackout period. That's quite severe. That's when you have a lot of alcohol, excess alcohol. So that in terms of memory encoding and memory formation and memory retrieval, you basically lose all those aspects of memory over that period. But you can have a less severe form of blackout where you don't necessarily actually become unconscious. You can be still conscious but not really there, not really with it. And you can have that can lead to sort of temporary, sporadic memory encoding and basically retrieval. So in other words, there's different phases of memory. You encode your memory. You have an occasion where you're sitting in a pub, you're doing things, watching a football match, for example, and you encode that briefly into your brain, and then normally in the normal situation you would sleep and you would actually further encode that memory into your brain, and potentially later you would retrieve it. But if you have different levels of alcohol, that process can be affected. So small amounts of alcohol, fine. But more and more alcohol, you go over a certain level, that can be affected. So it can affect your short-term memory, and it can affect your long-term memory depending again on the levels of alcohol you're consuming. And obviously losing long-term memory is a more serious situation, and that can come from large amounts of alcohol, what we call binge drinking, basically. And to be honest, that's how my from having children, that's, and myself, I guess, I still remember when I was a student, you have your binge drinking periods, and that's actually quite a common thing with students. Is you have a period where you have a large amount of alcohol, then you have a little bit of a rest, and then you have it again. So in between, theoretically, you're doing your work and so binge drinking is quite a common feature. Binge drinking can be quite dangerous potentially, because when you binge drink by nature, you're drinking a lot of alcohol in a very short period of time, and that can have quite serious effects on your brain in terms of, again, your memory performance, but also can affect your sleep. And the sleep and memory is actually intimately connected. Sleep is when you have a good night's sleep. That's where you actually encode most of your memories. It's also where you deal with your emotional state as well from the previous day. If you've had a bad day at the office, whatever, in the lab or in lectures or whatever, or with your friends, that emotional, you need to try and deal with that, and it's usually when you sleep is when you try and deal with that. And also encoding the memories of the day. If you come to lectures, hopefully you start to encode that information slowly into the brain.
Slowly.
Slowly.
Very slowly.
But actually memories it works actually. A bit of repetition is good. If you listen to a lecture, for example, and then a couple of days later you then revisit your lecture notes, and the brain likes that. That's how it actually encodes and actually makes the memory a bit more solid in the brain. But if you have a drink in between, or a heavy drinking session in between, that could potentially affect that process. So as I said, increasing amounts of alcohol, if you consume a good level of alcohol, binge drinking, that can have a knock-on effect on your sleep pattern, and sleep is fundamental. Actually, as I say in lectures, sleep is absolutely crucial for encoding your memories and dealing with your emotional state. So if you don't, look after that, and you affect that with alcohol or other things too much, tablets and mobile phones and the light at the wrong times of day, that can affect. Another aspect I think we're going to talk about in terms of circadian rhythm. Again, circadian rhythm is affected by alcohol. It's affected by the things you do, like watching too much mobile while you're in the pub, while you're drinking. That doesn't. The two go hand in hand basically in affecting your sleep, ultimately your sleep pattern. Okay, so like I said, moderation, drinking in moderation actually helps you sleep. Yeah, so in moderation, drinking alcohol is a good thing. Again, another positive aspect. It can actually help calm you down. If you've had a stressful day, it can calm you down and allow you then to have a better sleep pattern. But it's all about balance. It's all about getting that balance right, not too much. Otherwise, you tip into having effects on short term and long term.
I have a little sidetrack question.
No, me too. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. So when you black out, when you lose conscious and you don't form those memories, how does it happen that the next day when someone tells you what happened, you might have like a little snippet or like a little thing that brings you back into that lost consciousness, and you're like, oh, actually I remember doing this, or like they show you a video of like something that you did and you're like, I do not remember doing any of that yesterday. So how does that work?
Well, again, it's down to the levels, the amount of alcohol that you've been exposed to. I mean, alcohol, like I said, can have positive effects, can affect a system which, the neurochemistry in your brain, the chemistry of your brain, particularly a transmitter called GABA. And GABA is your major, transmitter, your major chemical that sort of depresses the activity in your brain. So it's all about thinking of a seesaw. You've got a yin and the yang. You've got a positive, negative, excitatory, inhibitory system, and the GABA system is your inhibitory system. So what alcohol does, in reasonable amounts, is just boost that inhibitory system, so it just makes you a little bit calmer, stabilizes the brain, not too much excitation, just enough inhibition, just stabilizes you. And if you have too much of the alcohol, that can tip it to be too depressed.
Yes.
So when I say depressed, it's not like depression. It's actually depressing the activity in your brain. So it just is slowing down all the sort of networks in your brain, and that can make you sleepy, and it can also affect your mood. Yeah.
And also your physical response to getting hurt, because a lot of people just get into fights because they can't feel the punches.
Yeah. So again, it's depressing that signal. So the pain signal, for example, is run. It's a stimulating excitatory signal that's calmed down by inhibition. So if you basically increase that break, the inhibition part, yes, you're reducing that pain, and then you're increasing the pain threshold. So you need more pain to feel it. Yeah, if that makes sense. Basically, it's pressing that brake a bit more and a bit more, so you don't actually feel the pain, which can be a bad thing. Remember, pain is very important to feel pain, because it tells you that you're in trouble.
Fight or flight.
And it can all hit you the next day. You'll just wake up and your body is so sore, and you're like, but yesterday I wasn't feeling any of the punches, and now all of a sudden it's hit you like.
It's because alcohol, one of its major effects biochemically is on this receptor, the GABA receptor, which again just slows things down, depresses your responses, which can be a good thing sometimes. If you want to feel calmer, that's a good thing. But when you put yourself in a situation, it overcomes your fear of your situation, and you put yourself in danger and you get hurt, but you don't necessarily feel it. That's again can be potentially dangerous.
And my question was, this is also sidetrack. My question was just, as people drink, so obviously when you first had your first glass of wine, it has a higher impact on someone that's never drunk, like that's never had a glass of wine, compared to people that have been drinking over the years. So I'm just wondering, like, as people increase their alcohol tolerance, do you think that the brain can also adapt to how much they've been drinking, so that these responses, like the responses they would have if it was just their first glass of wine in 10 years, would be reduced over the years, and they can now tolerate, even though they're drinking a lot, their brain now tolerates how much they're drinking?
Yeah, that is true, but that is in some ways dangerous as well. Yeah, now if you can tolerate larger amounts of alcohol, then you potentially are doing yourself damage in different ways. Basically, you can lead to nerve loss, neuronal loss, potentially if you take too much of something that is potentially toxic. So tolerance, yes, it might feel like it's a good thing. Your brain's sort of adapting. I mean, the brain does adapt. It's an amazing organ. It can adapt to a lot of hits, but there's a limit. And also, having that tolerance is dangerous. It makes you actually addictive. You go from tolerance into addiction. Okay, and many, there are people obviously that are addicts in terms of alcohol. It's like drugs as well. And actually, alcohol can push you into an addictive behaviour. So it's quite common if you take too much alcohol, you can drift into other things that can do you damage. But you take them because they're pleasant initially, and then you go into again a tolerance state like a drug. And so it's quite common, alcohol. I mean, alcohol is a drug, a little bit like that. But having lots of alcohol and having a long periods of taking alcohol, that can take you into another culture, into potentially starting to take drugs, and starting to take other things basically. I mean, it can even take you into, overeating is an addiction as well, binging, that sort of mentality. So again, eating too much food, eating too much of the wrong sort of food, it takes you into that sort of mindset. So and it's all about, again, if you want to think about the biochemistry of that, the GABA system modulates also another system which modulates a chemical called dopamine, and dopamine is actually the chemical that's stimulated, that makes you feel good again, and also leads you into an addictive sort of state. For example, my wife's one real issue is I shouldn't call it an issue, but she loves chocolate. We all love chocolate. The reason most people love chocolate is that, again, you get that boost of dopamine. Those sort of addictive things like chocolate, nicotine, caffeine. It's the same sort of system, and again, alcohol can do that as well. It can stimulate the dopamine system again to make you more addictive in nature, and therefore more prone to take drugs or eat too much or to do other things, basically.
So you're trying to say that even if someone is only addicted to alcohol, it can lead to other addictions, like in their everyday life?
Oh yeah, definitely. I guess it's the cultural aspect as well. Obviously in a social situation. Again, depending on your social situation.
It is very true that anything, it's commonly known, I guess, in university, that anything you do, if you add alcohol to it, it just times 10 fun. Like even if you're just like, I don't know, going on a walk with wine. It's, I don't know, it's
again, it's a social thing, and it's it's pleasant, and it's the social thing. Plus, it's hitting the the addictive elements of your brain, basically. It does fit. Within student communities. Again, I go back to my days as a student. I drank way too much. As a student, I shouldn't say this to your audience, but I don't really remember my first first 2 years of university.
Oh my God.
That shows you how bad it was. You know, it's. I won't name the college I was at, but there are reasons for those sorts of things. Anyway, but I'm like I said, I'm not. You know, that's not a good thing.
Yeah.
Not to remember. Well, I mean, I do remember parts. Usually when Chelsea were, won their matches. But again, that shows you, if you do, have a bit long periods of time as a student drinking, it can affect you. Definitely can affect your memory, and it can affect your performance, obviously, in exams and things. So it's all about moderation. So I mean, I don't want to preach, but it's all about moderation. I know, you guys, it's the culture, and it's, you guys are, fresh out from home, first opportunity of getting into the community, social, and alcohol is a big part of that, and it's very common.
No, that's incredibly informative. I think there's so many different things that students don't even realize that this addiction was caused because they're already addicted to something else, and I feel like that's something that I'm also going to be more cautious about now.
Definitely.
But that was really informative, and now we just want to ask about everyday functioning. So how would you now we just wanted to ask about everyday functioning. So how would you say how does alcohol affect impulse control and risk-taking activity, especially among students?
Okay, so we've sort of touched on that a little bit along the way, but I mean, again, it because of its sort of a depressant activity, i.e. on the brain activity, it does make you more confident in yourself, and it therefore then takes you into a potentially more risk-taking situation. In the normal situation without the alcohol, you would think maybe more than once about doing something a bit daft.
Or talking to anyone.
But with the alcohol, the way it works, like I said, in calming down those networks and calming down you and giving you confidence in what you're doing, and then it can take you into a risk-taking situation very easily. And there's something to be really obviously conscious about. And again, it fits with all the biochemistry, like I said, affecting the GABA system and the dopamine system, which we've talked about before, is giving you that high, that confidence to actually do something perhaps you wouldn't do it normally.
And would you say that that's a positive thing, like alcohol making you do something you wouldn't normally do? Could that be positive?
It can be very positive in some respects, absolutely, I mean, if you're naturally a shy person, which again many students are, you wouldn't believe it, but I used to be reasonably shy, but it does give you confidence to actually come out of that, and again that does help your mental health in some respects. Again, it's all about moderation. It's just to have enough of the alcohol just to make the first move, if you like, but not to the point. Obviously, excessive can then make you make the wrong decisions and can cause dangerous situations. Like confidence, like walking on the river in the dark. During a flood, that sort of thing. That obviously isn't something you want to avoid. But no, I mean, it can have positive effects in terms of bringing somebody out of themselves. Again, it's just that tipping point, just taking you out of that suppressed activity. So in other words, it can affect your mood very. It's a mood enhancing. In excess, it can go the other way. If you're naturally, a low mood person, you're a bit, easily
Bring
upset.
you more down.
It can actually go the other way. It can take you down that path. I mean, what you generally find is, I think that's probably true. Basically, but if you take large amounts of alcohol, it usually exacerbates your natural mood. So if you're naturally a shy person, it takes you down further. Yeah, but if you're naturally quite a gregarious person, it can take you the other way. You know, they're both potentially problematical. Yeah. So it's quite often, you have a set baseline level in your general approach to life, if you like, and alcohol seems to have that ability to exaggerate your natural mood. If you take too much, but if you take a reasonable amount, it's fine. It can help you sort of come out of yourself, like I said.
I wanted to ask, because you've mentioned, the question basically mentions decision making, and as that happens mostly in the prefrontal cortex, like, is there a part of it that, or have you seen any studies or anything that shows a decrease in neuronal density in decision making, or like caused by alcohol, or is it just like a very gradual thing that happens? Like, is there any time that, let me rephrase my question, if continuous binge drinking can affect the actual neuronal density of the prefrontal cortex, like,
right, yeah,
how long it
so
takes.
it's the difference between acute effects and chronic effects, okay? So short-term acute effects, normally alcohol works by physiologically changing the activity of the system, so you don't see any loss of cells or loss of damage. You just see a change in the physiology, so things are boosted or decreased, and that can happen quite quickly. You can have a quick effect, but they can then return back to normal. Okay. Now again, if you're doing more serious drinking, more continuous binge drinking type thing, then you move into the area where you can actually, you can lose cells. So you can lose the connections, you can lose the cells. So it's two phases really. It's like, let's explain memory simply to your audience, but non-biologists. Basically, you could have short-term effects on memory, which usually means that things happen within the cell, the receptors involved, get moved to the surface, they become more functional, short-term. Then you have the long-term potentiation, long-term effects of memory, where you get changes in the cells, into changes in the proteins. So more long-term effects, more long-term damage potentially in this case. All right. So there's short-term effects that just happen very quickly because it's just channels opening, ions flowing. You get physiological changes that can happen very quickly with alcohol. So you get these short-term memory effects, then which can be reversed, can go back to normal. Then you have the long-term damaging effects, which, because you're actually affecting what's happening in the cell at the protein level, things you're changing, the signaling, and you're changing things long-term. And you can lose cells, you can lose connections from those cells.
Sorry, I have another question. So when you say on the short term, when so all of the ion channels are open or closed depending on the amounts that you've drunk, I had a question. So I've read somewhere that they kind of talk about the brain fog. So when you wake up after either a blackout or just heavy-ish drinking session, you have this brain fog, this static that is just your brain kind of trying to level the neurotransmitters and everything, just go back to baseline.
Yeah.
Is that true? How does that work?
Absolutely, yeah. Brain fog is very common. Again, in the situation you described, basically, it's and again, it can be something that can again be reversed relatively quickly. And again, it depends on the amount of alcohol and how frequently you take it. So it can be, like I said, physiologically reversed, if you like. But there are situations where brain fog can be like every morning.
So sorry, is this every morning so if you went drinking on a Friday, you could have brain fog every morning for a week? Is that?
Well, again, if it's a continuous process, if it's continuous drinking, you potentially can.
Sorry guys, this is clickbait. I'm just going to say I'm just gonna ask the question and then just have you say yes. Okay. The question was, yes, if you went drinking on a Friday, could you come? What's the question? Could you have? Yeah, if you went drinking on a Friday, could you have brain fog throughout the rest of the week? Did I say frog?
Yes.
I did, right? I did say frog. Don't worry, guys. It's bloopers. Okay. If you went drinking on a Friday, could you have brain fog for the rest of the week?
That is possible. As well as actually, the changes in the physiology. Another important thing to think about is if you drink large amounts of alcohol, it can affect your ability to absorb nutrients from your food. So that's another, again, a different aspect of physiology. It's away from the brain, away from nerve cells. And that's very important. Again, if you lose that ability to absorb key nutrients, vitamins, for example, then that can have knock-on effects again on your general health. And brain fog is believed to be partly due to that, as well as the general effects on the nerve cells function and the physiology of the nerve cells. So yes, you can have it. Potentially, there are cases where you have a binge drinker on a Friday, and you have brain fog on the Monday. 2 or 3 days later, because it's that nutrient absorbing aspect. That even if you eat sufficiently, if you don't absorb it properly, then you don't get the benefits of that food. So that's another aspect to think about. Yes, brain fog is something that is commonly seen, and it's something that can be avoided, obviously, if you moderate your alcohol content.
Amazing. So we've touched upon earlier circadian rhythms, and I just wanted, can we deepen into that? So how does alcohol impact sleep and the circadian rhythm?
Okay, so in terms of sleep, we've sort of discussed a little bit. Alcohol does modify your sleep again, depending on the levels. It can allow you to sleep better if you have a small amount. Alcohol can improve your sleep, and again, circadian rhythm is all about getting the right levels of sleep and the right levels of daylight. At the end of the day is night, and circadian rhythm is governed by the light. So in the morning you wake up basically because you have the blue end of the spectrum in the light, which triggers actually your wakefulness, and it's actually a transmitter called histamine that does that. So that brings you into a sort of a waking state for the day, and then as the day goes on, the light changes more into the red side of the visual spectrum, and your histamine levels drops off, and then another chemical kicks in called melatonin, which allows you to sleep. So the circadian rhythm is generally governed by light in the old-fashioned sense, but actually something to bear in mind is actually controlled by your feeding behaviour, your eating behaviour. So you can offset your circadian rhythm depending on your eating pattern as well, and it controls similar chemicals in your brain.
So would you say that if students studied with, instead of like white light or yellow light, with blue light, that could help them like concentrate more because their body would feel more awake? Or
it would, but you have to be careful you don't do that at the wrong time of day. At the end of the day, you should try and stick to the natural circadian rhythm. Yes, if you're obviously inside a house studying, then you need to boost your blue light at the right, in the mornings, for example, and going into the afternoon as you study. The problem gets there that a lot of students study at night. And consequently don't sleep as well. So it's sort of almost like the worst thing you could do, but you do it. I mean, that's the nature of being a student. So you just have to be wary about that, not, to try and get a decent amount of sleep at the right time, and use the light appropriately. I mean, at the end of the day, it's better, it's best if you have a good, in the morning, just make sure you get out, expose yourself to the blue light, just fully wake yourself up at the beginning of the day, and then the rest of the day, you can manage that state. Obviously, it gets more, like I said, more problematic at night if you are binge revising. And yes, I mean, it does work, and you can stock up your memories and for the exam, but what you'll find very soon is you'll forget a lot of that stuff because you haven't done it at the right time and the right circadian rhythm. And alcohol, if we get back to alcohol.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I get sidetracked.
But if we get it's all important because it's all connected. With the alcohol again, alcohol does affect the circadian rhythm. It affects the chemistry, the biochemistry in your brain. Again, it can upset that, and as a consequence, it can then. I mean, that has the knock-on effect on memory encoding and your emotional dealing with your emotions and things like that. So it's all tied together. And yes, I mean the main effect on circadian rhythm is because you're if you're drinking in excess, you're upsetting your sleep pattern, and therefore that has a knock-on effect on your natural circadian rhythm. An interesting fact is that actually you might not realise is, the circadian rhythm affects not just your brain. Every cell in your body is actually controlled by circadian rhythm. So if you upset circadian rhythm, it can affect, particularly your gut physiology, and the gut-brain connection is very well known now. In fact, it has been suggested it's the basis for a lot of brain diseases. What's happening in your gut and how you affect your microbiome, and again, the microbiome is affected by alcohol content, and can kill some good bacteria as well as bad bacteria, and that can affect again how you absorb nutrients, how you take your food, but also has a knock-on effect on the health of your brain as well.
And so can you say if alcohol is affecting your gut health, then it can increase the chances of you catching diseases?
Yeah, I wouldn't use the word catching. Be careful.
Okay.
Catching is not infectious. No. Well, it does. I would say yes. It has.
Sorry, can I change the word so that I can?
Yeah.
What word can I say?
Developing.
Developing. Okay. So would you say that alcohol impacting your gut health would increase the chances of you developing diseases?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean that is.
Clickbait.
There's growing evidence of that, basically, not just brain disease. Your gut health is actually becoming more and more clear. That's really fundamentally important. Keeping the right levels of what we call the microbiome. The good bacteria and the bad bacteria. And again, you can control that with nutrition, with food, your diet. But you can also control that with alcohol. Potentially, again, in moderation, in a good way. But in too much, you can have a deleterious effect on your gut and your gut microbiome, and how you manage infectious disease, other diseases, coming in. How you manage that, so your immune system is greatly affected by your gut health, and how you deal with infections, how you deal with potential long-term chronic neurological or other parts of your body diseases there. And so yes, your gut, it's becoming really, really clear now. The gut health is very important, and yes, there's growing evidence, particularly for Parkinson's disease, that it may start in the gut.
So, sorry, would you say that like stronger alcohol, so like a more alcoholic percentage, has a bigger impact on gut health because of like its antiseptic like mode of action? Because I mean, everyone's had it whenever they had like this shot that is like 74% like
Would you say,
absenta.
like tequila.
No,
Maybe.
tequila, no, absenta probably.
Absolute.
The absinthe is, we're
No,
talking.
it's like hard alcohol.
Yeah.
So like
50 plus.
Yes. So would you say, because you take it and it just feels like your throat has been absolutely like cleaned of anything that could have been there?
Sorry, Cristina, we
So-
need to re-ask that question. That's clickbait. You said
Yeah.
what's the name of the alcohol? Absenta.
Yeah, I think
So-
absenta.
Please, can you change the question to would absenta specifically, and then what was the question again? Would
It's just like
absenta-
would any hard like 50+% alcohol such as absenta directly like kill most bacteria in the gut?
okay,
Something
can
like
you-
that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, can you re-ask the question?
Okay, so would you say that alcohols of with a very high percentage, like 50+, such as absenta, have an effect of... No, I lost it.
It's fine. It's okay. It's okay.
It's the pressure. I
bloopers,
swear.
guys. Bloopers.
So would you say that a very high percentage alcohol, such as like 50+%, like absenta, could kill the bacteria in your gut and essentially affect your brain?
Yeah, I mean, basically anything, 50% plus. I mean, obviously that's unusual. It's an unusually high alcohol. Most alcohols, most spirits are around sort of 40-45%. But yes, the excessively high percentage alcohols. I mean, logically that could kill bacteria, certain bacteria, and that could be the good bacteria in your gut, and it could have a knock-on effect again on your general health, not just the brain. It could cause problems long-term. Again, if it's something you do a lot, it could have long-term effects on your gut health, which could then lead to long-term potential effects in your brain.
Okay.
So, I mean, even a good Scotch, 40-45% potentially does have some effect. What you have to remember is it has to go through the stomach first. So a lot of it's lost in the stomach. But so, some will get to the gut, and it could have some damaging effects.
Sorry, could you re-ask the question, but change
Yeah.
the example to Scotch? Because I feel like an alcohol that more people drink would be more clickbait. So
True,
Could
okay.
you drink absinthe?
yeah, like maybe let's do Scotch, because I think that would be like a
3 days ago, I saw 7 people
Oh.
drink
Oh, they
it.
drink it. Oh, I know they
Yeah,
drink it.
it's been drunk.
really.
But yeah, I can definitely.
Okay,
it's-
thank
it's
you.
quite true.
He doesn't need to redo the question. We can just
Yeah.
change the clip.
So.
It's okay. It's
No
okay.
pressure. So would you say that high percentage alcohols like Scotch, which are just like 50% or 45 to 50% above, have implication? No. Kill bacteria in the gut.
It's okay. Again. We're on the
Yeah.
last question, so it's
Okay.
fine.
So would you say like high percent alcohols such as Scotch can kill bacteria in the gut?
Would you say Scotch can kill bacteria in the guts? Because that's
Okay.
clickbait.
Okay. Would you say that Scotch kills bacteria in the gut?
It has potential, yes. I mean, Scotch, being about 45%, is quite a high level of alcohol, and if it reaches the, if it reaches the gut, which a proportion will, it has potential to kill bacteria, and that includes the good bacteria that's maintaining your gut health and actually your body health as a consequence, including your brain. So yes, it does. It's something that, again, in excess, in large amounts, could cause a problem. In small amounts, the body can cope with that level of alcohol, and most of it will get lost in the stomach for example. Okay, but again, there are, I know, in the student community, students that do also get their hands on something even more stronger than Scotch. I wouldn't recommend it necessarily, generally for health, and obviously that has more potential again of killing your good bacteria in your gut and then having consequences long term, especially in large amounts and taken routinely. So as I said, I wouldn't recommend that. A little bit of nice Scotch is fine.
And now that we're speaking about students specifically, would you say that with the increase in alcohol consumption among students these days, do you think that this has sorry, gonna have to redo that one. But speaking of students specifically, with the increase in consumption of alcohol within the students in this university, do you think that has impacted how their brain, guys?
How their brain?
Bloopers. It's okay. Yeah.
Actually, one thing maybe I need to make you aware. Actually, the levels of alcohol in this university and generally in student population is actually going down.
Yeah,
it's not actually going up.
Mm.
It's still high, and it's something to ask about.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just something to be a little bit aware, to be aware of.
But the main reason for that is because students are taking on harder drugs. They're most of the population are falling into, well, now the popular ones is like ketamine or cocaine or weed or like stuff like that, and they're tending to fall more into that than actual alcohol, which is worse.
Or they do both, because alcohol enhances what the
As we
drugs
talked
do.
about before.
Yeah, some even mix it to drink it.
But sorry, the
maybe
question.
just to ask the question is the high levels of
Okay.
alcohol.
Okay. Would you say the high levels of alcohol consumption within students is impacting how their brain ages over time?
Well, again, it depends on levels and it depends on how long a period the students are taking the alcohol. But yes, it has an obvious effect, certainly in the short term and potentially in the long term, again, if that trend is continued after university. The studies, there has been limited studies, looking at long-term effects of alcohol in terms of future prognosis, if you like. But logically, as a pharmacologist, it's pretty obvious. If you take something at high amounts, that is damaging the brain, and if you take that for long enough, you're going to have consequences. Plug impossible.
Yes.
We're meant
So,
to do that.
okay,
Oh my gosh.
I can ask. So now that we've delved into the biology of alcohol in the brain, we heard that you were involved in Impossible. Could you talk about what it is and why is it?
So, yes, we've talked about the pros and cons of alcohol, and mostly the negative sides of alcohol, the long-term use of alcohol. Now, and also we talked about why we drink. Now, what the reasons why we drink, just to reiterate, it's for the social aspects. You like the taste and the social aspects and the feeling you have in terms of improving confidence in the social side of things. Now, the idea of this product called Impossible, and it's the first of its kind really, is to actually come up with something that is a replacement for alcohol in terms of the damaging, the negative aspects of alcohol, but still maintain the positive aspects of having drink with alcohol, because again, you know, we have a long-standing love of alcohol, and we do drink alcohol for good positive reasons. So why not have a product that gives you those good positive reasons, but is designed to remove those negative aspects, so hangovers, those dehydrations, those negative, you know, those aggressive activities you have with alcohol, that we want to, you know, put aside. Okay, but so, you know, generally out there in the market, you have companies that have generated what we call, you know, non-alcoholic beers. If we're taking beer as an example, but the problem with those, yes, they look like the beer, they taste like the beer, most of them. Some of them don't taste. I don't want to name any names, but, you know, for example, Guinness Zero. I'll plug it because
we'll censor it.
Yeah. Anyway, there are beers that actually are very good, even though they don't have the alcohol. They taste like the alcohol. But the one problem they have is they don't actually give you any of the positive effects of alcohol and the reasons why you drink alcohol. Okay, so this product called Impossible was designed what we call from the bottom up, so various components, various plant herbal components were chosen that were designed and have a long research history to give you the positive effects of alcohol. Okay, they're not alcohol generating, but they give you the effects. Okay, without, you know, the negative effects. So you choose. It's a selection of herbal products plus a little bit of hop to give you a little bit of the flavour, and it's a special. The fermentation process is a cold form of fermentation. It's quite unique. It's a unique way of fermenting this particular product. But the most important thing for this discussion is that it's designed to give you the positive effects, the social aspects. So there's called the social blend. So you know a reason why you go to the pub, why you have a drink, is the social feeling of confidence and talking and discussing the latest football match, for example, and latest political decisions. Is to give you that confidence to have those social interactions. Also, it calms you down, and the products are designed also to give you ability to have a nice, good night's sleep as well. Okay, so it's those positive aspects that you get when you drink a small amount of alcohol.
Sorry, Josh, it's gone off.
But you got what I said.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the idea of the product. It is relatively unique, although there are a couple of companies that have jumped on the bandwagon. I've noticed recently.
Oh no. So was there no patent for this?
Well, it's patented,
Okay.
for that particular product. But the idea was, originally from Mark, who was a philosophy student here in Durham. So his story is basically, like most students, he liked a glass of alcohol, and maybe a few too many. But he developed a health problem from drinking the alcohol, and you can develop health problems from drinking too much alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
You can get an allergy. We didn't talk about that. That you can become allergic to alcohol, like you can become allergic to most, anything really, and it stops you from really drinking. But he liked, the feeling of drinking, the social, and also the positive things, the positive aspects of drinking. So he wanted to come up with a product that would give you that. So it came from his history of health problems from alcohol, but he still wanted to maintain that. I mean, he could have drunk the non-alcoholic beers that are out there, but you wouldn't have got anything from them apart from maybe the taste and the look. Yeah.
Would you say that is part of the addiction of alcohol? That even if you're not able to drink it, you're craving it, Like you're craving that, like that social aspect that comes with alcohol.
There is that aspect to it, yeah. I mean, the alcohol can make you crave as well, but but yes, there is a desire to, you know, to be one of the gang. If you like. Yeah. So you know you buy your non-alcoholic beer, and it looks like it, and you pretend, you know.
You just cover that 0%.
Yeah, no, you cover the 0% exactly. But this is different, you know. It's a different way of approaching it, and the other aspect of the drink is that it does have health benefits as well. You know, the products that have been selected are, you know, healthy products. You know, one of the components is theanine, which is actually one of the main components of green tea. And green tea is again a very well-known health product.
It's an antioxidant. Green tea.
It does many things. Yeah, antioxidant. It has many anti-inflammatory. It has a lot of very good effects for the brain and the body generally. But if you remember, green teas taste.
Yeah,
I really like it.
A lot of people don't like it. It's pretty like
I love
and
it.
cancel matcha.
Cancel matcha.
It's an acquired taste. It's put it like that.
Wow.
But theanine is that. So somehow Mark's managed to remove that tasting aspect of the theanine, but still maintain obviously is an active product. So there's 4 or 5 elements within there. As a biologist, I helped him with, because he came to me as a philosophy student. He didn't know too much about the biology.
That's amazing.
So I helped him a bit about the choices. But to be honest, he had done quite a lot of the literature search himself, and, you know, come up with it. But I sort of reinforced that they were good ideas. But he's made it into a tasty product. He's made versions of it, you know, so the lager, the pale ale. There's an IPA version, which is pretty good. The stout version. I mean, I don't want to advertise it. I don't get any money for it. You know, but you know, I like the ethos. It's the ethos of it, basically. You know, if we could encourage, you know, students to drink something like this. I'm not saying, you know, just drink Impossible, but, you know, something like this which actually would, you know, give them health benefits, would actually get them away from the bad aspects of alcohol, but still maintain the ability to, you know, to enjoy yourself at university. Yeah. So that's my attraction to it, basically. So it's a different way of looking at the process, it's a healthier alternative, if you like.
I have a small bonus question, sorry.
Yeah.
So because you've mentioned that it can help you like socialize, especially when everyone's drinking but you're not. How do you relate that to the effect of when someone doesn't drink but they get drunk by proxy, as in like their friends are drunk and he just feels in this like mental and physical state of I'm drunk, because he sees in its environment that people are drunk, and I don't know how to explain this concept, but I just say like drunk by proxy.
Again, that's the psychological effects.
Oh.
Okay, so you're experiencing your mates enjoying themselves, and if you are of the right, you know, mentality, some people maybe take that the wrong way and feel, I'm left out. But if you take it the right way, you can absorb that, you know, psychologically, that state of enjoyment. Yeah, you know, again, it depends on the individual. You know, if you're the sort of individual, you know, for example, I enjoy if I see if I'm the driver and I see my mates enjoy themselves, I don't take it, you know, I join in, basically, you know, and that's the sort of, it's not necessarily I suppose it is a biochemical effect, because you are, you know, psychologically getting the right vibes, and therefore that can trigger, you know, good the biochemistry within your brain that, you know, that you're enjoying yourself as well. So it's almost like a sham effect.
Okay.
Yeah, when you think about a drug trial, you do a sham versus
a placebo effect.
Sham placebo effect. Yeah, you know, the placebo effect is a very strong effect, actually. And you know, I've run trials with natural products, for example, that involved, say, massage as part of it was an essential type of trial and the massage itself was very much a placebo effect. It wasn't biochemically doing anything, but just the physical touch. So being in the presence of your mates enjoying themselves, even though you're the driver and you're not enjoying it, you can all enjoy winning a football game basically. Yeah.
Fair enough.
That's more psychological, but it does have biochemistry. Everything comes ultimately down to biochemistry, but at the end of the day,
fundamental sciences.
You tell your psychology colleagues basically it's all down to the biochemistry. It's all down to the biology. But at the end of the day, because nerves have to, they've got chemicals. At the end of the day, connecting correctly or not correctly.
Well, thank you very much for speaking with us today.
We appreciate you taking the time to inform our amazing audience about how to drink responsibly, why you should, and the effects that alcohol can have on your body.
Good and bad.
Good
Yes,
and bad.
yes.
Good and bad.
Everything in moderation, even moderation.
Okay. We'll see you guys in our next episode, and thanks for unbottling the truth about alcohol with us.
Bye.